What is the political status of Quebec within Canada?
The political status of Quebec within Canada is a complex and historically significant issue. It revolves around the concept of Quebecois nationalism and the province's desire for more autonomy or even independence from the rest of Canada.
That's true. Quebec's desire for autonomy has been a defining feature of Canadian politics for decades. Can you give me some historical context on this issue?
Certainly. The roots of the Quebec sovereignty movement can be traced back to the late 1960s and early 1970s. The Quiet Revolution during that time saw a surge in Quebecois nationalism, a cultural renaissance, and a push for greater provincial powers. In 1976, the party Quebecois (PQ) won the provincial election, and René Lévesque became premier. The PQ's main goal was to hold a referendum on Quebec sovereignty.
I've heard of that. So, they wanted Quebec to become an independent country.
Yes, the ultimate goal of the PQ and the sovereignty movement was to make Quebec an independent nation-state. In 1980, Quebec held its first referendum on sovereignty association, but it was defeated, with 60% of Quebecers voting against it. However, the issue didn't go away. In 1995, another referendum was held, and it was incredibly close, with the no side winning by just a narrow margin of 50.6% to 49.4%.
That must have been a tense time in Canada. Why did the second referendum fail by such a small margin?
Several factors contributed to the close result. One was the clarity of the question itself, which some found confusing. Additionally, there was a strong mobilization effort by Federalists who campaigned vigorously against sovereignty. The rest of Canada was also deeply engaged in the debate, and there was a significant outpouring of support for Quebec to remain within Canada from other provinces.
So, the issue of Quebec's political status remains unresolved.
Yes, the issue of Quebec's political status is still a matter of debate in Canada. While the sovereignty movement has somewhat subsided in recent years, it has not disappeared entirely. The party Quebecois has lost power at the provincial level, and other parties like the Coalition Avenir Quebec (CAQ) have taken a more moderate stance on the sovereignty issue. But the question of Quebec's place within Canada remains a significant topic in Canadian politics.
I've also heard of the concept of distinct society. Can you explain what that means in the context of Quebec?
Certainly. The notion of Quebec as a distinct society refers to the recognition that Quebec has a unique cultural and linguistic identity within Canada. This idea was first introduced in the failed Meech Lake Accord of 1987 and later in the Charlottetown Accord of 1992. While these accords ultimately did not succeed, they sought to formalize Quebec's status as a distinct society within the Canadian Federation.
What kind of specific powers or privileges would Quebec have had if these accords had been successful?
The Meech Lake and Charlottetown Accords proposed various measures to recognize Quebec's distinct status. These included giving Quebec a formal say in the appointment of Supreme Court judges and recognizing Quebec's unique civil law legal system within the Canadian Constitution. It also aimed to provide Quebec with a constitutional veto on certain matters and greater control over immigration.
It sounds like these accords aimed to address some of the grievances and concerns of Quebec within the Canadian Federation.
That's correct. The accords were an attempt to find a constitutional solution that would satisfy Quebec's desire for recognition and autonomy within Canada while maintaining national unity. However, they faced opposition from various quarters, including some Indigenous groups and other provinces, leading to their ultimate failure.
Given that the accords failed, how has Quebec's political status evolved in recent years?
In recent years, there has been a shift in Quebec's approach to its political status. While the desire for independence has not disappeared, it has become less prominent in provincial politics. The Coalition Avenir Quebec (CAQ), which came to power in 2018, is a center-right party that prioritizes issues such as the economy and immigration over sovereignty. Premier François Legault has stated that he does not intend to hold another sovereignty referendum during his mandate.
So, it seems like the focus has shifted more towards issues of governance and policy rather than outright independence.
Yes, that's a fair assessment. While the question of Quebec's political status within Canada remains part of the province's political landscape, Recent governments have prioritized issues such as education, health care, and economic development. However, the debate can resurface during times of political change or if there is a significant shift in public opinion.
It's interesting to see how this issue has evolved over time. Are there any other key aspects of Quebec's political status that we should discuss?
One crucial aspect is the legal framework that governs the relationship between Quebec and the federal government. The Constitution Act of 1982, which includes the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, was passed without the consent of Quebec. This has been a source of tension between the federal government and Quebec, as it did not fully recognize Quebec's distinctiveness. Quebec has not formally adopted the Constitution Act of 1982 to this day.
That's a significant constitutional issue. What are the implications of Quebec not adopting the Constitution Act of 1982?
One of the key implications is that Quebec does not have its own distinct constitutional amending formula. This means that any changes to the Canadian Constitution, even those pertaining specifically to Quebec, can be made without Quebec's consent. It also means that Quebec is not bound by certain provisions of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the same way as the rest of Canada.
So, this lack of constitutional recognition has real legal and political consequences for Quebec.
Yes, it does. It's a source of ongoing tension and debate. Quebec has sought various forms of recognition and constitutional accommodation over the years, but a resolution to this issue has proven elusive.
It seems like finding a long-term solution to Quebec's political status within Canada is a complex and challenging task.
Indeed, it is. It requires a delicate balance between recognizing Quebec's distinct identity and accommodating its aspirations while maintaining national unity and the integrity of the Canadian Federation. It's a multifaceted issue that continues to shape Canadian politics and will likely do so for years to come.
Thank you for providing such a comprehensive overview of the political status of Quebec within Canada. It's clear that this is a topic with a rich history and many nuances.
You're welcome. It's a topic that's important to understand, as it has had a significant impact on Canadian politics and continues to be a subject of debate and discussion. If you have any more questions or want to delve deeper into any aspect of it, feel free to ask.